Back in the USA Network studio, joining me from the Minnesota North Stars is someone who really figured to be a main man in the plans for this year, Willi Plett of the Minnesota North Stars. Willie, the first thing I want to talk to you about is the helmet story. You put it on this week, and now George Ferguson has joined you. All the North Stars wear helmets. What's the story behind your reasoning?
Well, probably the main reason is a good friend of mine, Ed Kia, is in, serious condition in the hospital, and, he's a friend of mine. He's got 4 kids, and I'm going to have 3 kids here shortly, and it's just not worth taking the risk going out there. It could happen anytime you're off balance, somebody hits you into the boards, you could, get a concussion, things like that. It's just not worth it, so I decided to put one on.
Did your wife enter into the decision-making process at all?
My wife has been telling me to wear a helmet for 6 years now, so I finally took her advice.
There's an article in the current issue of Hockey News where Fred Shero comes out and says if nobody wore helmets, the players would play a little bit more relaxed and they wouldn't have the hitting. Do you subscribe to that theory at all?
Well, if everybody didn't wear a helmet, I don't think it'd be as many high sticks as there are now. It's just like in junior hockey or, minor hockey, kids are forced to wear the mask, and there's more high sticking and butt ending and stuff like that going on than there was before the masks were mandatory. So, he's probably right. If nobody wore a helmet, the guys would be more, leery of getting a stick themselves, so they don't use their own.
Well, that's one of those battles that can be bantered back and forth for quite some time. Is it tough getting used to?
The first few games was, kind of uncomfortable, but I'm getting used to it now. I've had it on for 4 or 5 games now, and it's starting to feel better all the time.
Well, it's no secret that when the Minnesota North Stars acquired you, a former Rookie of the Year and former muscle man is a term that everyone's been using. It's hard to shake that off. Is it difficult coming into a team situation where you're geared for a specific role on the team as you were?
Well, I've always played aggressively, so that's never been a problem for me. And I've come here and I'm average 25 goals a year in my career, and I can also score goals. But my main role, they want me around, in case things get kind of rough out there, then I can play when the going gets tough. And, especially when the playoffs are coming now, I've got to be one of the leaders on the team and go out there and play as physical as I can and lead the team in that respect.
This is a wide-open hockey game and a very exciting one to watch. How does a player like Willi Plett fit into the North Star scheme, a fast-skating, wide-open hockey team? Where do you fit in?
Well, my role is probably just as, if we dump the puck in, I go in there and forecheck and try to hit as many defensemen and many players as I can just to stir things up. And, when the playoffs come, that's the type of hockey that's played. You just shoot it in and go chase them and make them cough up the puck and see if you can score a goal.
This rivalry between the Chicago Blackhawks and Minnesota North Stars, we've had a lot of comments from Doug Wilson and Tom McCarthy throughout the night. And, of course, we've been talking about it because it is not new, but it has really come into its own this year. What are your feelings about it?
Well, there's quite a rivalry there now. Chicago beat out Minnesota last year in the playoffs. I wasn't here, and they're bitter. The Minnesota North Stars are bitter towards Chicago, and it's developing in quite a rivalry. And it'll be interesting if we play each other in the playoffs. During the playoffs this year, and it's going to be quite a playoff series.
Willie, one of the things that almost comes out and slaps you in the face as you flip through the Minnesota Press Guide is born in Paraguay, South America. How did that all come about?
Well, I was just a year old when we moved to Canada. My parents were farming in Paraguay, and they decided to go for the better life in Canada, so we all packed our stuff and just moved to Canada.
And you grew up in Canada, and that's where you learned how to play hockey? Yeah,
I grew up in a little town called Niagara-on-the-Lake. It's just across the border from Buffalo, and that's where I played my minor hockey, and I played my junior hockey in St. Catharines, just a neighboring little town, and 1 year in Tulsa, and a couple years in Atlanta, a couple years in Calgary, and here I am in Minnesota.
Now, you mentioned before your scoring statistics where you had been, accustomed to scoring X number of goals a year. Tonight you scored your 24th, I believe. Is it difficult adjusting yourself to scoring less goals and fitting into a team concept more?
Well, for me, it's, I need to score goals to, get my confidence. I've always, scored a good number of goals, and if I don't score goals, I get frustrated and I lose my confidence and I don't play very well. So I've just got to keep on doing. If I score goals, I usually play more aggressive, too, because it just gives me confidence. And I play a far better game if I'm scoring and hitting and doing all that. Everything usually falls into place.
Any thoughts about what may happen in the third period? It seems whichever team gets the penalty at the right time might be able to win this game.
Well, exactly. We're going to have to stay away from, any penalties. And I don't think you'll see anything different than you saw the first 2 periods. It'll be the same type of game. We might have to tighten up a bit. They had a few too many 3-on-2s and 3-on-1s and things like that. So we're going to have to tighten up a bit in the third period.
Thank you, Willie, for joining us here in the USA studio. Willi Plett of the Minnesota North Stars.